I just wanted to say a little bit about Grace. I have known Grace and showed with her since 1993. She is the maternal influence in my life, along with Mariana Chasen and Lisa Moran. Grace always said to me, just paint them. But I've known her for a very long time, and she is a true pillar of this community and a great supporter of people who want to make art. I also want to tell you that Mark and Mariana Chasen are like family to me. And one of the reasons I am back here is because they welcomed me into their lives again. I want to thank Amy Mayfield, who I drove crazy trying to find a house. Phenomenal realtor that could deal with me. And a very good artistic sidekick of mine. One of the other reasons I wanted to come back was Henry Schmidt, who was the past art director at Fisher Price Hotel. And I created some workshops for his designers and brought a lot of live animals in, particularly police dogs, that would hold a pose for about 10 minutes and drool for his designers. But Henry has helped me with my sculpture and been an incredible artistic force. I've learned a lot from you, Henry, and I'm so glad to be back here. My old colleague that I hired was a gift to me at Buffalo State, and that's Lin Yang, who is one of the most phenomenally trained painters I've ever known, and I've learned a lot from him, and he is here tonight. I can't quit without telling you about my sister in crime, which is Lisa Moran. We just drove to Gettysburg at a Jack Russell trial, and she probably had to slap me verbally up the side of the head a number of times to keep me sane. She's a great hand with Jack Russells and showing dogs. So Lisa, thank you for being in my life. Okay. I have, if you can read my, you probably think I'm a doctor the way I scrawled this, but if you come here and you walk by and peruse, I wrote this because I wanted the period that Fournier worked in, all of these other artists worked, and some of them you will probably know. Fournier's birth date was 1865 to 1948. John Singer Sargent, who is also an ex-student of what we call the Atelier system. All of these artists were trained in a very systematic way. They all had basically a 4 or 5 year training. And Alfred Munnings, one of my favorite, if you're in the forces, from England, 1865, 1959. Cecilia Gull, Philadelphia painter, portrait painter, 1855, 1942. Percival Rousseau, who was from Louisiana, also went to France to learn how to paint. And his dates are 1868 to 1959. Rosa Bonheur was trained in this system by her father. She did not go to school, and she is my true mentor. Other atelier artists, Corot, Millet, Diaz, Davigny, Anna Klumke, who lived with Rosa Bonheur the last couple of years of her life, also went to the Academy Julian. Artists from Buffalo that went to the Academy Julian, one of my favorites, Charles Carey Rumsey, who is in the Birchfield collection. It's the only reason I kind of went in there. His sculpture is absolutely amazing. Just a sidebar, there's a lot of his sculpture out west. I traveled a lot out west. Alexander Phineas Proctor, who did the famous Teddy Roosevelt on his horse. It's in New York, it's in Minot, North Dakota. He also went to the Academy Julian. Lucy Kemp Welsh went to the Herkimer Academy in England, and Frank Vincent Dumont, who trained many of our illustrators, also was a Barbizon School painter, and Dumont also went to the Academy Julian. What these American artists did, like Carrie Rumsey and Dumont, is they went to France, they learned the system, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the system, and they brought it back here. And many of these people ended up teaching at the New York School of Art, Art Students League. They taught many of our great illustrators also. So, in short, the program, there was an academy by the French government called the École des Beaux-Arts. I'll screw up the language, so Mariana, I'm sorry. But it was a government-sponsored school. And all artists that were serious about becoming artists had to go through the same program. By the way, Picasso was trained this way. William de Kooning. All of them were trained in this method. And once they had this foundation, it allowed them to become who they were in their mature work. This is an example. The first year of the Atelier program. Now, the École des Beaux-Arts was a government school in France, but each country, there was a Berlin Academy of Art. Picasso went to the Academy of Art in Spain, but it was all the same training. It was very systematic. The first year is copying from the flat. So you copy and you learn how to measure. You learn what the old masters did, and you learned about line, you learned about value, which is light and dark. And everything is done in pencil. And the word draftsmanship comes up. And what that means when you hear it is that draftsmanship is looking at something in front of you, whether it's a horse or it's a buggy or a car or a person, and be able to take something three-dimensionally and make that illusion happen on a two-dimensional plane. That's draftsmanship. You see that chair? I can represent. The second year is drawing from antiquity. This is student work that I got a hold of from France. The scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the best, these were only 8s. Okay? So everyone had to work from plaster cast, learning light and middle tone. So this would be like a middle tone. The lighter section would be your light area, and then of course you have your area of shadow, and within the shadow you have cast shadow. This actually, Leonardo da Vinci devised a system of how to get the most convincing sense of three-dimensional form. And the system was with one light source, 3/4 light, and any object, 1/4 in shadow. And that gave you the most convincing sense of three-dimensional form. And by the way, Rubens was the first impressionist. And the reason for that is that Rubens was the first artist to take that conventional, traditional light and move it to the front of the figure. So, yes, he was a romantic and irrational, they called him. But he really was the first impressionist, because bringing the light to the front of an object gives you the best color. This school is based on value and forms emerging in light and dark. So you don't see any sparkly cadmium reds and bright oranges. You will basically have a very limited palette. I'm telling you about this education because this is why Fournier was able to grow and do what he did. He sprung from this. So the third year, you paint still life. So you actually get oh, excuse me, you do black and white basic painting in, of a plaster cast. So you start by drawing and then you go to a plaster cast. And then the last year, and all along the way, they do have figure modeling throughout the live model. And the last year, you do a full model painted. Now, when you're talking about modeling, these poses are 2 months long. So, what I learned from this method is I took everything that I gathered in 10 years and applied it. If Rosa Bonheur did it, this is the way she did it, I went through and put myself through that program. And I believe it's one of the reasons that I was awarded the privilege of recreating the murals, because I understood how he painted and his basic training. This is a Fournier monoprint that I got from Grace, and I'll talk about sheep later. But this is a little copy from a French artist that I did to talk about what was most important in that basic training was the light and separation from shadow. You can go to any show or go into the Albright Knox in the 19th century room or the Met, and you will be able to tell by looking at the way the artist has handled shadows as opposed to light. In a very simple, very traditional way, and it's in all these Fournier paintings, is that the portrait, when you walk into Grace's gallery of Standor Landau, I wonder if we could bring that up. The very first painting. The portrait, yes. This is traditional 19th century painting. It was taught at the École des Beaux-Arts, and what I was talking about is in the darker areas, you will almost see the canvas. Shadows are transparent, and transparent means that you can see light through it, okay? And all your lights, if you look at even the murals in here, all your light shapes will have to be gloppy. They're called opaque. That means that light doesn't travel through it, and they have a physicality to them. If you look at the moons in Fournier's work, even in the mural in that room, and I also copied that technique in the fall in that room. The moon is very thickly painted. It's called impasto. Probably say that wrong too, but in any case, what I did in my work was that I applied this program to the animal form, plus dissecting animals, bringing that. But this is why Fournier was able to do what he did. One of the differences of the 19th century painter is that they held handheld palette. Now, many contemporary artists that are dealing with representational work have a computer, and they will sit by the computer, they will grid it out, or they will paint from the computer. I won't talk about that. This is how the 19th century artists painted, and there are many pictures of Fournier. I printed them out. Not only Fournier, but I have many pictures of Munnings and Rosa Bonheur, and all of the people who were trained under this system had a handheld palette. I'll put this down for a second. Show you why they did this. Unlike, can you hear me? Yeah. Great. Unlike people who sit at a computer or they paint like this, 19th century artists had their easel set up, and they would look out there and they would say, oh, this brush shape will best, in the minimalist amount of strokes that I take, will represent what I'm seeing, the side of a tree, or a brush, leaves. And they would make a mark, look out there, they'd make a mark, and they would walk. And they would see if that mark works from the distance, because that's how you see work in a gallery. The types of brushes the 19th century artists used, and you can come up and see these, were called filberts or rounds. The difference of a Barbizon painter and an Impressionist painter is that the Impressionists use flat. And the reason for that is because Impressionism is based on the titillating effect of optical effects of color next to each other. And this brings me to a very, very big difference of the 19th century academic trained painter, which Fournier was, and the Impressionist period. Painting is about space and the illusion thereof. There is a space called picture plane space and pictorial space. Fournier, could we have a landscape? You get a landscape up here. How about this one? Thank you. Keep going. There's another one that'll really talk about the pictorial space. One with the blue hills. And they are blue. Right, that's good enough. There were two devices he used because he was dealing with pictorial space. Pictorial space is, when you read it, foreground, middle ground, background, and the illusion thereof. Everything is designed to get you into that picture in an illusionistic space. That is 19th century painting. Your Impressionists, because of the optics of color and the tintillating brush marks and the flurry of activity, disseminated that. They got rid of it because the kind of space we were dealing with was called picture plane, meaning the surface. The 19th century artists worked off a toned canvas. This, generally, you tone the canvas to pretty much be the same tone. Doesn't have to be the same color, just the same lightness or darkness. Light, but it's an example of a toned little canvas. And the reason we worked off of that is when you apply white, you want a big difference in your contrast of value. Value means tone, light to dark. If you paint on a white canvas, you put white on it, that's what the Impressionists did. Because they weren't interested in making space. They were interested in the optics of the way brush strokes worked and the way color reacted against one another. So, the Impressionists were really the father of modernism. Because instead of thinking about illusionistic space, foreground, middle ground, background, they wanted you to think side to side, top to bottom. And what influenced them? Japanese screen. So if you think about Japanese, things are layered, objects are in front of one another, and that is a very narrow sense of space, not like this. Does that make a big difference? Yeah, okay. So, another thing that I wanted to bring up to you is a thing called mall stick. There's no way you can do this type of rendering and put your hand on here and then do this and just smush it off. So what you do, Henry made this for me, it's got a little dog with a mouth. And you put this here, and you rest your hand on here, and you can render with pencil or charcoal and not smudge anything. Another difference between Impressionism and the Barbizon painters. Oh, my microphone, thank you. I'm excited. I'm so excited. Okay. Another difference is Impressionism. The Impressionist painters went out and made a painting, and that was a finished piece. An artist like Fournier did multiple studies. That final painting had many little studies from nature, and he might have taken this tree and combined it with a study from something else and brought it in. The problem today is what contemporary painters, some, not all, I don't want protests outside, is they take a lot of photographs and they'll be creative and they'll start designing. And what they don't realize is that all these photographs have different light sources. So it destroys the illusion of space and it looks goofy. So he did multiple little studies. There are smaller studies in Grace to Show, and you can see how the devices he used. He designs. And a lot of the paintings, and Alfred Munnings did this, and once again, they all went to the Academy Julian. Munnings lived to 1959. Fournier lived to 48. They all went to this academy and through this program. If you go to the Moyban show, you will see that many times you are in the shadow in his paintings, that you are coming out of the shadow into the light. There are many times you'll see a path that is weaving, and these are painterly devices to get you to think of deep space and to get you to experience this reverie, this bucolic, taking you away from your everyday life. Another thing that you'll generally see in Fournier's work is very few things get cut off at the edges. He'll use trees to frame, to get you, once again, into that deep space and that deep reverie. Let's see. He used a very limited palette. He got a lot of punch out of a very limited palette. He used opaque colors. Remember, opaque means light doesn't travel through it. So, the colors he used, which I did a lot of these to do the murals, where I would take and I would bring them to the murals and see if the correct colors matched up. And even what I did was, if you're a painter, you know that different brands of paint may say the same color, but they're not. One might be more blue or more red. It depends. So I went through and got different colors. Fournier, there is a paint company that still exists today. It's Sennelier. And they actually, I got them to supply the paint for the murals. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention about the palette, once again, they were opaque colors, raw sienna, yellow ochre, everything was more earth, much more earth. He sometimes used a Prussian blue, ultramarine blue. At times, there's a color called cerulean blue, which is kind of, if you tint it, meaning add white to it, it'll get this kind of greeny sky. But you can make that with Prussian blue and yellow ochre and then tint it with white. So, you know, it's interesting today, and due to the pandemic, so many artists have created videos. And they tell you, oh, you gotta use these 20 colors, and these are the brushes you use, and then you can paint one thing. And when I was younger, I went through that, oh, I want to paint one. So I'm gonna take, and you don't need that if you went through this. And actually, all you need is one color. four: white, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and cadmium orange. And you can make a paint. So anyway, when I was looking a lot at his skies, all of the blue is an example. It's more thinly painted because it's a lighter value. And then if you look at his skies and you look at the clouds, they have three-dimensional form. They feel like cotton candy, like something that's round. And the reason that they feel that way is because he was a master in landscape of manipulating edges. If you've ever seen somebody who paints exclusively by photographs, everything feels very cut out and pasty. And when I'm talking about edges, if you look at this part of this green to this green, it's a very gentle transition. There's no cutout, but if you look over here to this green to the sky, it's very hard and it's very bold. And this is another technique that you learned at this academy. Sargent was the master of edges. All right, I had one more thing. If you want, as I mentioned before, he didn't just go out and make that painting. He made multiple studies, and many of these were done in the studio from his studies. And so what I did, obviously I'm painting horses in the field and stuff, so I had to learn how to paint outside. And believe me, you don't learn that unless you have a teacher like Lynn Yang. But what I wanted very much to say, and I have forgotten, this is the other thing. Fournier was a mass painter. Okay? What this means is that people, you go out and you'll draw the tree trunk and you'll draw the bush and you'll draw everything. He didn't do that. This is called mass painting, and it's just a little study that I took off of Munning's painting. There were no lines. I did not sketch this. And what mass painting is a shape and value, meaning light or dark, and they change. And finding that shape of light and putting it next to the shape that might be a middle tone and then your dark. It's like a jigsaw. So you don't need to outline anything. When Fournier did a tree, there was a stroke for the light side, a stroke that brought together what's called a mid-tone, and then a stroke for the shadow shape. Not a line here, and then fill it in. That is more linear painting. This is mass painting. So when he went to make his sheep, and I'm going to talk and then I'm going to end. But when he made a little thing like this, he didn't draw it and then fill it in. Brush, brush, loaded brush, brush. And that gives it a sense of solidity and roundness. His trees are just, if you squint your eyes, you can actually see those shapes of dark next to the light. So if you squint down, you can kind of see this shape of dark and then this lighter green. And he learned how to paint landscape by mass. Sheep. Okay, can we have some sheep? Absolutely. Roosevelt was, I actually took the job here in Buffalo because when they interviewed me, is there another one? Oh, that's okay, that's okay.
There's another one. Right there.
Okay, very good. All right. Millay did sheep, Fournier used sheep, and Roosevelt they were one of a lot. She did a lot of sheep. Just because they use the same subject matter doesn't mean the same thing. I have a Xerox. If you look at Rosa Bonheur's sheet, the difference that you'll see. Now, I'd like to point out 1822 to 1899. She was a chain smoker. She died from smoking. And just a little. But when you look at her sheet, every curl and every texture, but the most amazing thing about her is because of her empathy for animals, the eyes. Their mouths are bleeding, they're, like sheep bleed. But in her writing, she said she always felt bad for them because they always went to slaughter. And you can see that in the expression of her sheep. Now you look at Fournier's sheep, and I did because I included sheep in these murals from the Knox estate. And Fournier actually has their eyes are closed in a reverie. They're so happy to be out there. And he used them as design elements. You don't really see the wild eyes or the bleeding mouths. They were used as design elements. And Munnings also used them that way. But once again, what I like, if you squint your eyes, just kind of squint them down, you will see that shape of shadow as opposed to that cutout shape of light. And that remained throughout his whole life, and that training came from this beginning. So, I think that's all I want to say about sheep. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm home.
Well, thanks so much, Constance and Grace. Thanks so much. And thank you all for coming. For future events, we're learning, we're developing this, but please go to our website and make sure that there are tickets available. If there are tickets available, make sure you're reserving them. Some of the more popular events will have tickets, some of them won't. We're going to do everything we can to not charge. The Immortals have spoken and they don't want to pay. I've got an interesting artifact to share. This is actually Alexis Fournier's easel. And it was given to the Roycrofters at large. There's a letter of provenance there. But Harvey restored it for us. And, we keep it out at the gallery, but we were very happy to bring it tonight. What more appropriate use? So again, I thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the evening. But before you start enjoying the evening, and hands
Thank you. We agreed last time that I would close. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to share this with us tonight. When I came on last year, one of the first things we decided we wanted to do was to bring this back. And I'm so pleased that there's been such a response because it truly is a labor of love to bring these events back to the Roycroft Inn. I encourage everyone, if you're not already a member or a patron of RALA, to please check in with our desk on the way out. We have 2 membership levels. We have Friends of RALA and we have Patron level. We will continue to bring these back here for as long as we are able, and we will always keep them free to entry. We will restrict ticketing because obviously, right? But thank you very much, and we look forward to bringing more and more. There's also a save the date for the Winter Festival, which is coming up very, very soon. If you are not already a renewed member, Anyone that is member in good standing by Saturday, August 10th, does have voting privilege.